Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I want to take a minute to thank Beth Ruscio for stepping in at the last minute after a cancellation to read her splendid poetry. Beth's love and support, as well as her own writing about the Poetry Hour, is outstanding. Thank you, Beth Ruscio. We have two terrific poets with us today, John Wall Barger and Beth Ruscio. John will read first, and then Beth. John Wall Barger is the author of 6 collections of poems, including Smog Mother, Palimpsest 2022, his book of essays on poetics and film, The Elephant of Silence, came out in spring 2024 with LSU Press. He's a contract editor for Protonac House, lives in Vermont, and lectures in the writing program at Dartmouth College. John Wall Barger's poetry is wondrous and enriching. Here's a magnificent poet, John Wall Barger.
Okay, thanks so much, Harry, for inviting me. And I'm really, really excited that Beth is here as well. I've been communicating with Beth, and I get to meet her, and I'm treated to some of her poetry. So this is awesome. Okay, I have. I should say first of all that I am in Italy, and I am even redder than normal. I am normally a little red, and I'm very red today because I was out in the hot sun in Italy this afternoon, and playing with a little kid, playing soccer with a little kid in a field, and I just was out in the sun for too long. So yeah, extra special red version of me today. And yeah, I'm in Italy. I'm up in Bassano del Grappa. When you folks invited me, whatever that was, a couple of months ago, I thought I'd be in Italy, and it would be 10 p.m., which it is right now. The sun is just setting, and yeah, anyway, so I'm super excited to be here. So I'm going to read, I picked out a few poems. I figured if I have 20 minutes, it'll be fun to read 2 long poems. One of them is a more recent poem, and then a couple of short ones in my time. And I'll just say by way of introduction that I'm really, really interested in the intersections between poetry and other art forms. So poetry and visual arts like paintings, poetry and film, and just these wonderful intersections. Any kind of intersection at all, really. So this first poem that I'm going to read is called Dear Jean Vigo, and just the only context for that is any art house lovers will know that Jean Vigo died in the 1930s, and he was a French filmmaker who was extremely promising and then died of TB. And he has an amazing film called Atalant, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and another one called Apropos de Nice, which absolutely blows me away. It's a little short kind of documentary film. So this is directed, the you in this poem is directed to Jean Vigo, who's dead almost 100 years. And it was written in Italy last year. Yeah, Dear Jean Vigo. I watched L'Atlantique last night, such thorny joy, yet it's joy. Surprising because your life, Jean Vigo, was brutal. Your father, an anarchist, was murdered in prison. Critics hated your films. You even had to sell your camera. You kept getting sick while filming and died at 29 of TB. I notice you fill every frame with objects, details, texture, cats, trees, water, flowers, bridges, mist. Is it called mise en scène? I'm wondering how to do that in a poem. Pack the frame to bursting, make the scope that wide without exhausting the viewer. Joy, yes, joy, as when Juliette visits Père Jules in the film, the old sailor with him, with his 10 beloved rescue cats in his room of curiosities. He shows Juliette each thing in no hurry, an octopus nailed to the wall, a ceramic dog, a carved alligator, even a hand in a jar. Juliet is kind, laughs with him, brushes his hair. I'm not used to gentleness, says Père Jules. Juliet likes him, and so do you, Jean Vigo. In Irreversible, made in 2002, there's a violent scene in a gay bar. A man gets his head bashed in. We see it all. It's jarring. In fact, the director, Gaspar Noé, is one of the actors in that scene, watching the murder, masturbating. Must we put ourselves in harm's way for experience? Can't we just keep ourselves safe? Can't we be kind? You must be asking yourself, why did this scarecrowish poet wake me from my peaceful repose, just to ask me disjointed questions? Yes, I'm sorry, I realize, Jean Vigo, I have been leading toward a thought to do with L'Atlante, your film that seems to be about love and marriage, but is actually about something else. You filmed the river scenes, the barge drifting down the Seine with such profound darkness at the edges, a sky and river of ink, as when Juliet sits by herself on the barge deck, not responding as her husband Jean calls and calls. He finds her, they embrace, yet that darkness, chiaroscuro a la Rembrandt's self-portraits, gloom encroaching, swallowing. Silence is the word I'm searching for, not nihilism, but death perhaps, the sense that things change, all things, the Seine itself into which no one bargeman can step twice. And Juliet too is changing, life on the barge with Jean, not all that she imagined. None of our lives are on our barges. It's not sad, just an aspect of silence. In David Lynch's Inland Empire, Laura Dern, playing Susie Blue, is dying, crouched on the sidewalk between a Japanese woman and a homeless lady who chat about Pomona, the bus to Pomona, how to get to Pomona. One has a relative in Pomona. We sense Lynch's glee filming this horrifying, banal conversation, a kind of surrealist Los Angeles retake of Bruegel's Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. Life goes on, it says. All things shift. Even after the hero dies, a truth most films tuck away out of sight, hoping their story is every story. Which reminds me, I should mention, I'm in Scalea, Calabria, on a terrace facing the mountains of Tremoli, away from the Tyrrhenian Sea. I am eating an apple, trying to be quiet. It's so very hard for me not to be mad at the farmer pruning trees with a chainsaw. But he's now finished for the day. I sit quietly, letting the silence rise up. Not a peaceful feeling, not at first, not for me. It's like sitting in sludge anguish. I think that feeling is not me, but it is me, precisely, me beneath my name, the earth's sadness birthright. But under that is something else, something better. Eliot called Christ an infinitely gentle, infinitely suffering thing. I don't know about Christ, but under suffering is gentleness, I think. As in Rossellini's Stromboli film, where the soldier leans through the barbed wire to kiss Ingrid Bergman, who plays Karen. When I sit in silence on my terrace in Scalea, I reach my head through a known limit. At the end of Stromboli, Karen is pregnant, trying to escape over the volcano, crying. Note, in that scene, Bergman was actually pregnant with Rossellini's child. All that darkness and joy and suffering, the volcano's silence creeping into the frame like the murky edges of your Seine River, Jean Vigo. I admit it was your doc, apropos de Nice, that made me so eager to talk with you. Your loathing for the assholes on the boardwalks and casinos. You mock them with such exuberance that you elevate them all, us all, a spirit of silly grotesque, filming the imbeciles in their top hats fast forward. In Bitter Rice, the neo-realist film by Giuseppe De Santis, there's a moment halfway through I'll never forget. Ladies working in the truly awful rice fields begin singing in the rain, the hardest rain I've ever seen, rallying around a pregnant woman, a terrifying and agonizing song. Blood of love and pain, they sing, wailing for the plight of all women. 5 minutes of pure ecstatic horror, like your frenzied festival in Apropos de Nice, transcending genre, beyond satire or tragedy or fiction or romance, beyond. How the fuck did DeSantis have the balls to do that? How did you? So maybe Gaspar Noé is right. Maybe we should just leave it all out there, like Muhammad Ali, like a bleeding rabbit. In life, unlike movies, injustice happens in silence, different than the silence of Carl Phillips, who says, beneath the snow, the earth, in that earth language that used to be what we meant when we said silence, I said, I never left, and I'll be back. They found Neanderthal bones under Scalea, under, I like to think, my Gnostic terrace, which is just 250 miles from the island of Stromboli, a detail worth noting for those, like me, who think art and life are the same thing. Now an owl's hooting. No, a mourning dove. The farmer and his chainsaw are sleeping. I go to bed each night awed by the rice paper moon and wake throttled by preposterous fears. So, Jean Vigo, I leave space in my body for silence, so the grace will rise like ash to fill the vacuum in the air, to drift down the dark river, for I too am a barger. I want to learn like Père Jules to ford the darkness, to keep my sizable insecurities from hardening into arrogance. A month ago, my wife Tina was suddenly sick, wilting for a week, heart pounding, chest aching, hardly breathing. I sat beside her in the hospital day after day, scared, numb. They found the right medicine. She came home. I'm sorry, John Vigo. I know things only a person from your future could know. I've seen pictures of Leedom, your wife, beside you in bed, wearing a big beaded necklace, optimistic, bright-eyed, while you look terrible, eyes fluttering, mouth open. When you died, Leedom ran from your bed down a long corridor. Friends caught her just before she could jump out the window. It's crass for me to bring that up so late in the poem, but it's what happened. I wanted to say, I understand. I don't. How could I? Thank you. That's the first long poem that I'm going to read. Thank you. The next poem I'm going to read, and the next few poems that I'm going to read, are from this book that came out in 2021 called Resurrection Fail. And this one is called At the Barnes Museum on a Cold Fall Afternoon. And the context that I will give is that I lived in Hong Kong with my wife, Tina, from 2012 to 2014. And we befriended an odd, very tall poet and photographer and painter who then was completely unknown, and who then became very famous. To make a long story short, his name was Matthew Wong, and then he died by suicide in 2019. I hadn't been in touch with him for the last year or two, but we were very close during those years, and we stayed in touch for a few years after. Anyway, this poem is about him and him dying by suicide in 2019, and my response. I talked to my mother on the phone at one point, and she told me to find closure with Matthew, to go to the Barnes Museum, which I loved, but it was very expensive. So she said, go on Dad and I, buy yourself a lunch and spend the day there. And I'll just say that also Monita, who is Matthew's mother, Monita Wong, was kind enough to let me use one of his paintings for the cover of this book, which relates a little bit to this poem that I'm going to read. So this is called At the Barnes Museum on a Cold Fall Afternoon. And this is long, but perhaps not as long as the first. And then I'll just read one or two short ones and I'll be finished. Over my quinoa salad, I admit to the old couple from Chattanooga, who have come all this way to see the Van Goghs, that I think Van Gogh is corny, or maybe just reproduced too often in lacquered frames in waiting rooms of dentists. The kind of day strangers keep chatting to me and I keep putting my foot in my mouth. This morning, my mother said I should go to the Barnes on her and Dad to help me find closure with M, her words. So here I sit in the cafe, sipping coffee beside the old couple from Chattanooga, under a big window, blue sky. I've got that almond stuck in my throat feeling, which means I should cry, but haven't. The husband nods at me, chews, and stares. The wife, Bonnie, says, "Oh yes, she supposes Van Gogh is corny, but don't I think his lines hold the world together?" Now I stand eye to eye, as Bonnie said I should, with Van Gogh's postman, trying not to picture Van Gogh, the 37-year-old painter, rolled up in a ball, bullet in his gut, alone in his room at the Auberge Ravoux Inn. In August 2015, Matthew texted me a poem of his called Vincent. All around, the shirts of children are laughing and chasing each other's tails. I smile. Above the postman's beard and his fuck you eyebrows and post hat, Vincent scrawled, Vincent, in red childlike cursive on the green wallpaper of swirling flowers. Flowers chasing each other's tails, like the flowers in Matthew's paintings, ever blossoming. And yes, Bonnie is right, holding everything together, even me and Matthew. And now I'm crying so even the tour group can see. But that does not stop Nikki, ironic mermaid clip in her green hair, from asking if I've heard of this German kid, Michael Acker, who's a better painter than Picasso, wilder, feraler, more singular than Picasso, she says, while standing beside La Secte, that joyless, skinny blue guy with his sad lump of bread, painted by 22-year-old Picasso 70 years before his heart gave out while he ate with his wife and friends. In the last year of Matthew's life, before he stepped away from us, before he erased himself and his stammering affection for his friends and his inspiration, before he erased his long arms and dour face to immerse himself in nullity, he and I hadn't talked much, which is why I can't explain his specific grief to you. I'm gazing up at Matisse's dancers, his summer of all dancers. Matisse, who died of a heart attack at 84, beside Lydia Delaktorskova, his model and friend of 20 years, who, when she was sure he was dead, picked up the suitcase she'd kept packed the whole time and walked out the door. Grief sticks to me. Every burr of grief I've brushed against, the grief I've drawn a kind of circle around today, as suggested by my generous mother. This circle of paintings that we, accidentally united, gather inside. Almonds in our throats, burrs on our skin, from all that's clawed and scratched us since our births. Matthew would not like this poem. It's too long already and soft. But about that, Matthew, what surprised me was not your quicksilver talent, your sudden fame, your solo shows in Paris, Hong Kong, New York, but the sweetness of your paintings, the sentiment, the glitter, the flowers, so many small figures clasping their hearts, overcome with inward feeling. Strange all this, coming from one who never found a way to enjoy, as Kafka described it, the happiness of being with people. You'd embarrass us saying, "Wow, you look terrible today. Didn't you sleep?" Talking about yourself so unrelentingly, I had to yawn and turn away. In a room full of Modiglianis, a fella with cat whiskers shakes my hand. His name is Ronald, He taps the motorcycle patch on my jacket. Be careful, will ya? Ronald says, still shaking my hand, squeezing it. My son died on a bike. There's a Polaroid of Matthew as a kid. I saw it on CBC News with a look on his face, haggard, plagued, raging, like an old man. Now, my gifted friend, my quirky friend, you are dead. And this poem, which you'd have thought absurd, is for you. Or would you, maybe, I hope, with your secret sentimentality, have been flattered? Did you know Modigliani was 35 when he died, like you? But unlike you, who were alone, he, drenched in sweat, delirious, in the throes of TB, held his pregnant girlfriend, Heberturn, in bed. A man in a stovepipe hat hums to himself, and sunset falls over the walls of paintings around me. I shut my eyes against a Modigliani, but still I see it. You know it. That defiant boy in a sailor's hat, hands on his knees, mouth opened in a sneer. It's 22 minutes after. Perhaps I will read one more poem. So I'll read one more short little poem. It's called The Delight of Misapprehension. Ever hear, far off, a grinding, some big machine in the wrong gear, then realize with a pang it's an animal in pain? Once I heard a hawk scree, opened the door to find a kitten, astray, gazing at me, eyes cold. It's hard to hear right. Just ask the Arizonan mother, resting her head on the chest of a girl, not resting, listening to her son's heart, transplanted into this tiny brown chest. In antique times, those who died abruptly, they called gods. Since that's not an Arizonan custom, the dead boy, still just a boy, leans his ear on a splintered wall, listening to the dogs fighting just beyond it, which is a woman breathing. I'll finish there. Thank you so much, Harry.
Thank you, John, for your eloquent and erudite writing on film, and your personal and the cinema. I love Attalante. It's one of my top 10 films of all time. Just a simple journey down the Seine, and I love Michelle Simone and the woman who plays Juliet. She is just magnificent. So is the guy, and all the humor of Michelle Simone. It's just wonderful, and also I love the interweaving of the personal and the art, in cinema, and then later on in the other one, when you just that second long poem is elegiac and poignant, dealing with grief and love and loss, and so you just have so much strength of narrative, to say the least. I have a couple of questions for you. When did you write your first poem?
I wrote my first poem when I was 17 years old, and it was a very it was like an unapologetic crying out for a kind of recognition. I think it ended with angels applauding. It was terrible. It was a terrible poem, but it was like a real calling out for a certain kind of audience, which I don't know if I've ever found, and I think that's okay, I guess.
Well, that first poem of yours was perfect for this audience here. People who have worked in front of or behind the camera and are retired. And what attracts you to the cinema or to the poetry form?
Honestly, I think that I think I share with many artists that it doesn't really matter too much which form we choose, but as long as we concentrate and drill down into that form, and we just hold our concentration, we hold our gaze on the form that we've chosen. So, I mean, I was called hyperactive. I was probably ADHD by today's analysis when I was a kid. And so I've always had this energy, and so my brain works also in sprints. And so I needed to find an art form that accommodated this sprinting brain of mine. I don't think I would be able to chain myself to a desk, for years and years in order to create a big, wonderful novel. I think I'm better at the gesture and the fast, the fast thing. But honestly, Harry, I don't think there's much difference in art forms, and I certainly don't privilege any one over the other. I think if we're artists, we just have to find one so that our perceptual system kind of matches it somehow, matches the requirements of the art form. And then we just need to concentrate, hold our gaze on that art form for as long as we possibly can, before we burn out and die. These are such dark poems too. I didn't want to apologize for it because I love poems like that, but yeah.
Well, you do a lot more than sprint. I would say a 440 with, look at that Jean Vigo, that poem, and then the one following it. This is the motion picture Country Home. So we have a couple of minutes left. If you can tell it to us in that time, what are your top 10 films of all time?
Oh, wow. What an amazing question. And how cool that you know Jean Vigo, Harry. You're an art house lover. I can tell that.
Well, I'm a student of cinema, student of acting, student of poetry. I acted in Scorsese's first 6 films and his first TV show. And Jonathan Demme hired me 12 times. So you'd come on the set and you'd mention Preston Sturgis. And Marty would say that, we grew up on his dialogue. He wrote superb dialogue. So I just, I live in the movies since a little bit. Anyway, it's not about me. It's about you. What are your top 10 films of all time?
Is it about me? You were in all those films of Scorsese's. I gotta try to find you now. I'm gonna scour those films. That's so interesting. Okay, right now I have to say I'm really, really obsessed with David Lynch, who lives in your neck of the woods, I think. Is that right?
Well, I know he's been in Hollywood. I don't know exactly where he lives, but go on.
Yeah, I just watched Inland Empire, which I absolutely love. Perhaps Mulholland Drive is in my top 10. Stalker, Tarkovsky's Stalker is definitely in my top 10. I love him, and I've also been really, really obsessed with Italian filmmakers. De Sica is probably my favorite of the neorealists, but also Pasolini, to me, bridges poetry and film in a way that I just respect enormously. But Dino Risi, Antonioni, of course, Fellini, and the modern ones, Garrone and Sorrentino. I'm really, really in love with all the Italians at this moment. Yeah. Is that 10? Did I get to 10?
You didn't specify all of them, but we have to go to Beth now. But to me, the Gospel according to St. Matthew by Pasolini, who is as you know, an atheist, a homosexual, and a communist. It's the best film ever about Jesus. Very austere, used non-actors, and landscape. Everything was just so beautiful. But thank you. You just really lifted us all up. And I love your writing, John. So thank you very much. We're honored to have you on our show.
Thank you so much, Harry.
Okay.
I'm knocked out, John. I'm so excited to have heard all your talking and poems, and we are in conversation so much you don't even know. You'll hear my work and you'll see how much in conversation we already are.
Beth Ruscio, daughter of actors, part of a working class family of artists, actors, teachers, and writers. She is the author of Speaking Parts 2020, winner of the Brick Road Poetry Prize, and her work's been widely anthologized, most recently in Dark Ink, Poetry Inspired by Horror. She's won finalist honors for the Wilder Prize, the Sunken Garden Poetry Prize, the Tupelo Quarterly Prize, and the two Sylvia's Prize. An accomplished award-winning professional actor for 50 years, Ruscio has graced local and national stages, and her work can be seen on screens large and small. Her longtime favorite film role, playing the mom Holly Hunter wanted to kill, the positively true adventures of the alleged Texas cheerleader murdering mom. Her most recent publication from Padua Hills and Theater Communications Group is an essay in praise of humble ingredients, exalted. I love that. And a poem, Summer Calling, which appear in the book Outlaw Theater 2022. She shares her life with a gifted playwright and teacher, Leon Martel, and their talented dog, Lolita. Beth Ruscio, a chameleon in poetry and acting, is a personal, loving, transformative poet with a great ear who not only writes exceptional poetry, but has a sense of communitas for her fellow poet. Here's a brilliant poet, Beth Ruscio.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Harry. You're just a love. Well, okay. It's all I can do to go to my poems because I can't wait to talk to you later, John, and Harry, but here I go. I changed the set even as we were sitting here. So here we go. A lot of this is new work. Some of it will be work from this book, speaking parts. And what I like to do is put together poems that are in conversation with each other. So these are like little duets or, little couplets of poems. So here's the first couplet. And for California, it's only June. Ranting about golden hours and temperate climates and the blonde she used to be, hotboxing Salem's, her unholy halo of minty smoke just shows up, no call, says her place burned down, and the place before that, the Tomorrow Woman. We once gave each other nicknames. We were that close. Now, she sits in my captain's chair, a hard glance at me, and I'm listening, looking west, her narrowed eyes, the bracing nerviness of glacier blue. Out back, where we felled the willow, mockingbird parents and the stubbly growth feed their young in short bursts of hop, flit, fly, perilously exposed in the drought-starved yard. Is not natural, she's saying in her strafed voice, pulling at the ponytail she can't make right. Over Zoom, her daughters laid it down. They won't be bringing kids into this world. Not now, I stage whispered as our blood-red sun sunk into the maudlin dusk. Opening day at You Pick Cherries in the Leona Valley. To get there, we cross a landscape that shuns green, the same rain shadow Mojave that the death or glory sons and daughters once trudged, hallucinating, with the rumor of ocean more preposterous than oranges in groves. These days, it's meth country. The mayor's busy paving sidewalks into undulating curves, piping bird song through speakers, heralding a gentler downtown. Corrals of giant Paul Bunyan-esque fiberglass roosters and cows butting up against the road. Remember Them? Black and white sci-fi movie, 1954. Desert atom bomb tests and bam, Giant irradiated ants, mad, ruthless insects, stand-ins for commies. Kill one, two more take its place. For they say you have taken the sunshine. Leon sings and his voice rides us over to where there's grass. Now we're under the spell of the song that aches like a phantom limb. We pick $36 worth of deep purple red Brooks cherries. Admonish not to eat them in the orchards before we pay up. Gorge on them in the car, staining our fingers, lips. Feed your beast. Escaping time, drenched in time. In time, you hear a song only once in your life. Hang on to it, lodge it in your long term, swinging on a single summer. Notes. Stop the clock. In this way, it will wait. The past ahead for you. Once you check out from the library where the homeless homestead, flavors of Aleppo, their grand city square pulverized. But you will brew their strong coffee, brought to a fierce boil, and nearby on the same shelf, in memory's kitchen, a smuggled heirloom of recipes handwritten in faintest pencil. Starving women dictate in whispers how many decagrams of softened chocolate, liters of cream, spoons of fresh spring. Once, your arms full of future, you come upon a sour-smelling transient and hand off your Hershey's Kisses, all three. Chocolate, he sings, a little, a boy again, a grimy song grin. This poem is set in the basement of a theater in Mariupol. I wrote this in the beginning of the ongoing assault on Ukraine. And it opens with this epigraph. I know you are reading this, there where you have landed, stripped as you are. Adrian Rich, Atlas of the Difficult World. Stasis. In the dim light, the seamstress with a scissors tattoo on her left forearm bends to yellow fabric. Radiance shines up into her glasses like wheat fields. Her eyebrows meet in solemn concentration as she adds whimsy to the garment. At the corners of her mouth, a tinge of upturn. Here, a portrait collar. Here, a row of unpartnered button loops with embroidered knots, bits of lace she'd caught in her hands, grasping at belongings as she rushed to leave her life for this theater basement. Her handwork would be a creation constructed of numbing afternoons by frozen fingers periodically thawing to pins and needles. Enough lace for half the collar, half a life, stalled like a weather system over water without release, swollen and blunted, dry-eyed, but sighing, yes, all the time now, like Chekhov's comic character Masha. I'm in mourning for my life. Not all of it need be bitter. Next to her, the child sings to her dolly, who wears an apron with pockets for her own baby dolls. She makes it up, a kind of lullaby, what they'll do when they are back in the sun, like before all this started, keeping her voice small, then smaller, losing the battle with the bombing above as the room turns towards her. Sky lantern. For those who don't know what this is, it's a paper contraption that you light a flame inside of on this little pedestal, and it moves the lantern up into the sky. And people use it when people die, and you will hear what happens with this particular sky lantern. Sky lantern, inflated by flame, a partially charred paper balloon skitters down. It lands on our foiled effort to grow a lawn. Write your wish, reads the blackened directions. Mama, it begins in dark pink ink, continue to watch over us. I will continue to party in your name. The last time I saw my mom upright, she was slipping through the strongman grip of Rafi, caregiver straining to transfer her surrendered body to the hospital bed in the parlor. She had renounced walking. Her astral projects grounded to Ouija boards, staring an upside-down glass. She divined her way round the spirit world, rubbed letters clean off, feverish. Her consecrated circling a succession of boards worn out, and there was no stopping her until the day she abandoned sitting up. I want to believe in an afterlife. I want to believe. I want azure perfume, an auburn light glinting off her red gold hair. Taken to the soil. In late September, the ground he picked out warm yet, the boy lay down. His human days over, he had taken quite devoutly to the soil. Fall was heavy, drifts of rust ballast for the voyage. He felt the knot in his stomach unspool, become taproot, his spine douse for loam. He let his lungs fill with spores, dust, the cast-off wings of insects. He matched his breath to the suck of the wind as glint ebbed to thrum, then hush, he let the earth hear him out. Each day before school, his sister fills a bottle from the tap, carries it to him by the neck. Evenings, she scatters coffee grounds, flecked with gleaming eggshells, and quietly, she stretches out next to him, their faces close as crossing lights. And this is this next couplet, this next duet, is two longer pieces. Not quite as long as John's, but longer nonetheless. And this first one is called The Blind Know About Daydreams. Darla, this makeup artist I worked with, had some horrible crack up, got her face Frankensteined back on, sideways, with staples. She looked pieced together mid-seizure. So Darla startled the stars. Well, everyone at first, though a self-deprecating way can go far in Hollywood, surprisingly. Oh, I don't mind the stares, she liked to joke. Being shunned is worse. She had to begin long before dawn, laboring over her face, rutted scarlet running welts, ruby grafts and rilled edges pinked into her forehead. She slathered on her Joe Blasco #1 concealer, yellow distracts red. Then she'd strap a see-through sling of mortician-made illusion to her shattered in 9 places chin. 2 hairpieces, a Polynesian fall, and a fringe that just grazed her lashless lids. One time, this actor, some ruthless killer type, stepped up into the makeup trailer she kept meat locker cold, got a load of Darla, and gasped in a high squeak, rubbed his face, gruff, and within an instant, all was outwattaged by his flashbulb smile. In the picture business, love is just a retake away. It's an honor to work in movies, she told the make-believe killer. Attending to the beautiful, she didn't stop. Rigging perfect faces for the camera's X-ray glaze. It's a gas to match skin shades to names. You're Dior Suntan. I'm Cinema Secret Champagne. Each face another stray to lay hands on, she said through Invisalign teeth. Then you're mine on the day. She was serious. She really put her back into it, wielded the finest grade sandpaper, buffed off the trails of capillaries, tiny crap the high def sees, played up his facial symmetry, left side, right side, identical. It looks more demonic. All the while, her face close enough and in position to kiss. She talked to her actors in the looking glass, fake face to fake face, the way we picture types conversed, applying disguise after disguise, and on display, reflected in mirrors that ran the length of the trailer. All day Darla, known for her gentle, scathing, unscathed hands. And here's my last poem. Let me just set the scene. This is a Los Angeles location that was chosen for how much it looked like the embassy in, which had French architecture, the embassy in Saigon when it fell. I shot this movie, or rather this HBO, whatever it was, special, and it was about the fall of Saigon. And here goes. The poem is called Dirty Work, and it opens with this epigraph from Ocean Vuong. A helicopter lifting the living just out of reach. Night sky with exit wounds. Dirty work. Night air whipped up by whirring blades cools us. The whole chute, an atmospheric swamp, invades this desert basin, thick, hot, sticky, like a dragon's exhale. At the location, an LA stand-in for the American embassy, old French architecture, green around the faucets, black mold that won't scrub off. We trudge through the plot, grease painted, hair strategically oil slicked up, smoke Marlboros, and feel the heat equalize in our lungs. Now, the middle of the last night, we bless this loud, doorless 1975 era chopper. We can't hear anything anymore. We're leaving. Scream your head off, Vietnam. Real Marines, cast as Marines, won't stop pumping their toy rifles, barking, evacuate, move it, unass this place, now. Takeoff feels like a giant standing up. The director says, you don't even have to act. Just let the gravity wash over you. Below us, the pitch blacks punctured with street lamps as we careen over the Hollywood freeway. Oncoming headlights, rows of white and pre-dawn tails, streak red in their brightness, receding as after a long night of tripping, trails high on altitude or nothing at all, or after days on end of shooting the fall of Saigon. Never been in a helicopter before. On this Dramamine-free ride, we're passing through the gates of nausea and pandemonium. We have to be leaving, but are soon tugged back by the unchecked cargo of wannabe refugees, their arms hooked onto the landing skids, causing a drag on the engine's motor, a baffled whirring, high-pitched and shrill, like the wailing cry of the useful birds of Vietnam, the cattle egrets and oxpeckers that hang out in the grassy verges of airports, who do dirty work, attending to the water buffalo, grooming them, pecking out ticks, grease, snot, mucus, earwax. It's how they're nourished, grazing on giants who tolerate them, violently shake them off, passively allow them back. Fugitives are shrugged off with a sharp bank, unlatching them, pitching them off to the long drop into the South China Sea. All of them flailing, then soaking wet, handed towels, then on the next take, dunked again. All of them extras, summarily wrapped off the set in bathrobes. On board, we feel the jolt of their departures like a convulsion. Feel the chopper suddenly burst higher, severed from attachments, eclipsed by the score. Hendrix growling through, "There must be some way out of here," as if he isn't already years and years in the ground. Every time you fly, look for useful birds. Landless, they delight the sky.
Thank you very much, Beth. You know how much I love your poetry. Your poetry is radiant, precise, generous. You have such a superlative use of language. There's also a tenderness, and your poetry is loving. I was deeply touched by the ascension of the sky lantern. You know, your love of your mother. You know, your poetry is tender, and you're a personal poet, but you always include the larger themes and the world within it. We have a few minutes, and let you and I talk a couple of minutes, and then we'll bring on John, so both of you can talk.
Yes.
I asked John this question, and we talked about poetry before. And what are your top 10 movies of all time? Briefly, or at least some of them.
So briefly, I know. You know what? I have a cheat sheet somewhere, because when you asked him that, I thought, oh, I better get this ready. Because, I did a show of yours called Poets Talk Movies. And I think you might recall that I turned into a movie, my gigantic, more than 10 movies. But I would say, akin to John, a Tarkovsky's Solaris, Dog Day Afternoon. I mean, it's very hard to pick. It's like picking children. I mean, Forbidden Games, which is a René Clément movie. It was my parents' favorite movie. It's a great movie. Don't Look Now, which is a Nicholas Roeg movie that takes place in Venice, where John is. Well, he's not in Venice, but he's in Italy. Vagabond, which is an Agnes Varda movie. Contempt, Godard's movie. I have to say that whenever Reds is on, a Warren Beatty's movie, I can't stop watching it. It's impossible for me to turn away from that. Jesus' Son, which is a movie of Dennis Johnson's book. I mean, McCabe and Mrs. Miller. Don't make me choose. All of Scorsese's movies, every one that you're in.
I love Godard's Contempt and Breathless, and also there was another one that you mentioned right before that. It slipped my mind right now, but
Vagabond.
Vagabond. Yeah. I love Agnes Varda. You know, she was.
Yeah.
I was so sad when she died. And I saw her last film. You know, when she was.
Me too.
And I love it from Cleo from 5 to 7.
Yes.
She's just fabulous. You know, she was the godmother of the new wave, as you know. And since John, I'll say this, then we'll bring John on. You two can, since John mentioned Jean Vigo, you can go from lot to lot and jump to Breathless or 400 Blows, and you see the same, you know, Boris Kaufman type of visual and natural light and all that. So thank you, Beth. I just cherish you and your poetry, as you know. So thank you. And John, why don't you come on? We have like a couple minutes, and Beth, why don't you take a minute and talk
I'll take
about
1
John,
minute.
and
So
John, 1 minute for Beth.
Okay, so you said you were in Calabria, or maybe that was where that one poem. My people are from Calabria, so that's one thing I wanted. Yes, that's one thing I wanted to say to you. And what was the other thing? The whole idea of a surrealistic landscape. Oh, also I wanted to say, my God, in antique times, those who died abruptly, they called gods. My goodness, what a thing! What a thing! So, and I also agree with you that I started as a painter. I am also an actor. I'm a poet. You know, I cook. I mean, all of these art forms, I think, are essentially about dreaming with your eyes open. And to be in a movie is like being in someone else's dream. So it's nice to be being at the helm of my own art form as a poet, because I'm finally in my own dream.
John?
Those amazing. And Beth and I have been communicating, but I can't wait to talk to you about the poems you read today, Beth, and to communicate with you more.
Oh, good.
Yeah. One connection point I had was, is the last film of Agnes Varda the one where she knocks on Godard's door and he doesn't answer?
Yes, I think it is. Yes.
How heartbreaking that moment. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, you two have just given us so much and lifted us up and brought us joy and elevated our consciousness. And it's really been beyond here belief. You're both so good with words, and it's exalting. It is to me, and this is sacred time. So thank you very much, John Wall Barger and Beth Ruscio. I want to make an announcement for next week. There will be a reading from the Lost Lunar Baedeker poems by Mina Loy, by the marvelous readers Corinne Conley, Kay Wiseman, Ruth Elliott, Dixie Walker. You won't want to miss this. She was a rebel and even modern today, 100 years later. So thank you once again. Allegra, are you there to bring us home? There's Allegra. So thank you.
I am.
Beth Ruscio and John Wall Barger.
Thank you. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, John. Thank you, Allegra, and all the Creative Chaos team.
Thank you so much.